Greetings, Helldivers. Erevin here with a breakdown for the newly released SMG 32 Reprimand in Helldivers 2. The release of the Truth Enforcers is in full swing, and the new weapons are showing a lot of promise. In my opinion, none more so than the Reprimand, our first heavy SMG added to the game. But how good is it really? Well, we're going to go over a full breakdown of all the weapon's technical stats, including all the details Arrowhead tells you not to worry about with their in game UI. Then work our way through all of its breakpoints against the enemies of democracy to establish its target effectiveness, ultimately answering this all important question. So, let's get started. First off, the Reprimand fires Rhino rounds, its own variant of the Verdict's ammunition, dealing 125 ballistic damage, 32 durable damage, and penetrating medium armor with an AP value of 3. Given that this is also an automatic weapon, although at a relatively low fire rate of only 490 RPM, these extremely punchy rounds give the Reprimand a burst DPS value of a very respectable 1020 and a burst durable DPS of 262. Overall, this slides the first ever heavy SMG into sixth place for the statistic when compared to other primary weapons, which is overall pretty solid in itself. But the exciting part is the breakpoints that 125 ballistic damage hits will be covering in the later section. That raw firepower is higher than any other automatic ballistic value as far as primary weapons are concerned, unless you count the Jar 5, and it hits some fantastic sweet spots as a result. Overall, the firepower for this ballistic weapon feels like the very first ballistic automatic weapon to immediately hit solid, worthwhile numbers on release without any need for immediate buffs. Big W. Hey, we finally got a good assault rifle on its release day, guys. The raw firepower is the weapon's biggest strength, however. Sporting only a 25 round magazine, it is pretty easy to dump this thing empty in a hurry, utilizing sustained fire even with an RPM of only 490. Overall, this feels comfortable but not excessive by any means, thanks to how much those individual bullets are getting done on average. You also receive 9 spare magazines, giving you a grand total of 251 rounds before empty, or getting 4 magazines from field crates and all 9 spares from the resupply. Overall, the ammo economy is actually extremely solid despite the lacking magazine size, allowing you to stay in the fight for surprisingly extended periods of time before needing to resupply. The reload speed is also pretty average, taking 2.5 seconds to perform a tactical reload when a round remains in the chamber, but what everyone is going to be doing is reloading from empty for the 3-second reload. This is due to the fact that this weapon does the
HK slap.
Getting into the ergonomics and deep specs of the weapon, the Reprimand has the nastiest MOA in the game with a 50 by 50 spread pattern. If you've never heard this term before, MOA stands for minute of angle, a unit of angular measurement that's used to describe the accuracy of a rifle's bullet hits on a target. A 50 by 50 minute of angle means a target area that is 50 minutes of angle wide by 50 minutes of angle tall, which translates to roughly a 50-inch by 50-inch area at a distance of 100 yards, as 1 minute of angle is approximately equal to 1 inch at 100 yards. In other words, it's arbitrary video game inaccuracy. The reprimand very often is not going to shoot exactly where you point it beyond very close quarters engagements within 20 to 25 meters. This isn't a death sentence by any means, however, as it simply determines this weapon is best utilized with an up close and personal aggressive playstyle. Great for pushing, not so great for defending, as you want to get up in there. Something that is notably absolutely no issue at all against the Terminids, who have much larger weak points and play at very close ranges, compared to the more medium to long range engagements against the Automatons. Due to this being an automatic weapon as well, we find accuracy through volume of fire. Fling enough lead down range, and you're very likely to hit some headshots anyway, just off random chance, essentially making the Reprimand's playstyle very akin to that of a critical chance based weapon, which fires generally in the direction of a weak point until a round just happens to land. Moving on from the accuracy, though, the horizontal recoil is extremely relaxed at only 6 points, but the vertical recoil is an extremely high 55 points. This isn't too much of an issue unless you're trying to run and gun, as even from the standing position, the low RPM for an automatic weapon keeps this vertical recoil in check. pretty easily as long as you continue to pull down during sustained fire to stay on that target. And in the event you don't drag down, the odds are pretty decent when aiming for center mass. The next round is likely just gonna bounce its way into a headshot anyway. Next, the weapon has an ergonomics value of 55, which is relatively middle of the road. It has a bit of drag behind your aiming reticle when swiveling, but nothing too jarring or extremely noticeable if you are used to slightly heavier weapons, often like the Diligence counter sniper, for an example. Definitely nowhere near the amount I initially expected, absolutely not requiring the usage of peak physique to operate. Instead, the fortified passive is quite a good option due to the high vertical climb if you'd rather not have to pull down during sustained fire as much or often. Lastly, this heavy SMG is in fact two-handed and cannot be paired with the ballistic shield or carrying packages. Overall, this ended up feeling like an okay decision, as I now strongly feel this weapon would have been borderline too good if allowed to be wielded alongside the shield, or if allowed to run and gun against the Terminids with that reduced movement speed penalty while firing. Lastly, it's got a non-variable red dot sight unfit for ranges beyond 50 meters, but that feels a-okay, of course, due to this weapon not being very reliable or accurate beyond that point anyway. A stagger force wise, it's on the low end at only 15 points with a pushing force of only 10, meaning the reprimand only causes a flinching effect on medium enemies, only heavily staggering the lightest of enemies in the game. Basically, the crowd control capability on this weapon is only based on the most permanent form, that being the death of our enemies. The damage fall off on the heavy SMG is also much lower than I expected, maintaining its breakpoints pretty easily out to 50 meters, which is really all the further you're ever going to want to be shooting this weapon due to its MOA anyway, so overall this works out just fine. Lastly, the reprimand, while it is classified as a low sound profile similar to the ballistic sidearms, is not a very good option for stealth gameplay due to its inaccuracy. Nothing is more awkward than attempting to quietly take out a trooper from behind 20 meters just to have the bullet sail over his head as he calls in a bot drop. That does it for our deep dive of the technical aspects of the SMG. So, next, let's get into those all important breakpoints, starting with the automatons. That ergonomics breakdown might have left you with mixed feelings about the weapon, but once you hear about the breakpoints, I'm positive that you'll understand why I'm singing this weapon's praises. Troopers are taken down in one shot to the body or head by the reprimand, even the ones with light breastplates, making it an excellent option for spraying them down in groups. Just keep in mind the accuracy of this weapon and the small frames of these bots mean you're going to need to maintain a relatively close range and aim for center mass for greater consistency. Berserkers get shredded by the reprimand, going down in just 3 bullets to the red stomach region or a lucky headshot. Although the reprimand can't slow swarms of them down with any kind of crowd control, it controls them just fine by debuffing them with rapid disassembly all the same. Devastators are also torn to pieces by the reprimand, falling to just one lucky headshot, which happens extremely often, as you can see here. When spraying into their breastplate or otherwise destroyed by 3 shots to the stomach, 6 shots to the heavy devastator backpack, or 7 bullets to that upper breastplate if you had never happened to land the headshot during your volley. Hulks might be able to deflect all of the reprimand's damage from the front, but should you get an angle on its back weak point, you can destroy it in only 13 hits, sending them into a fatal bleed out shortly after. As far as primary TTK on this weak point goes, half the magazine is quite good in my opinion. Unfortunately for the reprimand, its lack of an explosive element and ballistic nature makes the tanks, turrets, and barrager back weak point a tough target for it, soaking up to 37 rounds before being destroyed. Enough damage to help, but not enough to get kills outright without a single magazine. So, best to have other options available for this task. Rocket Striders get owned by the reprimand, falling to just 4 hits to their crotch plate very consistently and quickly. However, it should be mentioned that if utilizing full auto to do this, it's going to be extremely important that your recoil compensating drag down game is on point, as it's very easy to bounce your follow up shots into that class 4 armored upper plate. Gunships are very difficult to kill with the reprimand, despite it only taking 14 hits from it to do so, mostly due to its inaccuracy. Although the gunship's thrusters are decently sized targets, the range they hover away from you can make it difficult to connect repeated shots on it more often than not, requiring you to dump the magazine to get results. That being said, however, far from the worst results as far as primary weapons go when facing off against this enemy. Just likely best to have other options available in your loadout, instead only doing this as a last resort. So obviously, you shouldn't really ever try to kill a factory strider with the Reprimand, but just for the sake of knowing how many shots it would take, the Chinling guns on the front can be destroyed by your SMG in 15 hits, which is less than amazing, and the strider itself can be killed through dumping 58 rounds, also known as two magazines in the third, into one of the belly doors underneath the strider. This is not something anyone will ever need to do, but for the sake of being thorough, now you know. That does it for the automatons. So, what about the Terminids? The Reprimand does an excellent job at combating the Terminid threat thanks to its extremely punchy projectile damage and armor penetration. While the recoil and inaccuracy of the weapon is of little concern due to the fact that the faction always plays within your effective range, and their head hitboxes are massive targets, unlike the automatons. So let's check in with how many rounds it takes downrange to send these guys to the big E710 farm in the sky, shall we? Scavengers and their annoying locust like counterparts get obliterated by the reprimand exploding into E710 on impact from a bullet landing anywhere on their tiny bodies, and considering it's an automatic weapon, it manages to keep up with groups just fine. Hunters and warriors get the 2 round burst special from the reprimand. Hunters can't survive 2 bullets to their body and go down in one lucky headshot, while the warriors lose their head and enter a terminal bleed out upon receiving just 2 rounds to the face. Because of this, my recommended way of handling swarms is to fire the reprimand in 2 round bursts, quickly swapping between targets each time to save on ammunition and better keep up with the swarm. Vile spewers stand very little chance against the medium armor penetration of the reprimand, dropping dead should they receive 4 rounds to the upper section of their head or 3 rounds to the lower exposed jawline. Bit of a mag dump if you don't have the headshot angle at 16 rounds for the spine plate or 13 rounds to the exposed green glowing sides of the butt. Overall, a very capable answer for this threat commonly found during ICBM missions. Now, normally, lacking stagger on the Terminid front would be a serious concern when it comes to stalkers. However, the Reprimand has both the penetration and raw firepower to compete with these enemies in a DPS race, dropping them in just 2 lucky headshots or 11 rounds to anywhere on the body, allowing the heavy SMG to work through up to 2 stalkers before needing to reload. Not the best stalker answer in the world, but a very workable one for sure, and far from the worst. Now, you would also think an extremely inaccurate SMG would be bad for killing hordes of shriekers, but similar to the results you get with flak cannons against air units, we once again find accuracy through volume, as spraying into the horde is likely to land the one and only hit you actually need to put them down. So, this actually feels quite good to fight swarms of shriekers with, surprisingly. Hive guards get blasted by the reprimand, dying in just 4 hits to their front plate on top of their heads, or 3 bullets landed to their little mouths, although this one is quite unrealistic for the reprimand due to the recoil. If you lack an angle to fire into this front plate, however, the reprimand will still knock them out with just 4 hits to the body all the same. Alpha commanders get absolutely worked by the reprimand despite their highly durable heads, falling into a fatal bleed out should they receive just 5 bullets to the face thanks to that medium armor penetration overwhelming their light armor for some very clean TTKs against this very common enemy on difficulty 10. The reprimand is so very close to being a workable charger answer, funny enough. It takes 28 rounds to the butt in order to destroy it, sending the target into a fatal bleed out, where it can do nothing more than waddle around and wait to die. Best to use something else as your go to charger killer when running the reprimand, but if you've nothing else and a battle buddy nearby, this does notably deal enough damage to help take down these threats, even if it's not quite enough to do it all on its own in a practical manner. On the other hand, the Impaler can be dropped within a mag by the Reprimand, soaking just 23 hits to the forehead to bring down, making it a very workable answer against the big fella, even if it is a bit on the long side as far as time to kill ratios. Now, this is going to be another one of these things you just shouldn't be trying to do, but just for the sake of knowing what it does take to accomplish, Bile Titans can be dropped by the Reprimand after soaking 80 bullets to their exposed underbellies, so over 3 magazines. Far from an ideal answer, but hilariously pretty far from the worst primary weapon TTK for a Titan that we've seen here. Do you want to try to kill this Bile Titan, this rogue Bile Titan with the Reprimand?
Yeah, but that was a leg glitch.
Okay.
Or
Basically,
it's
Alrighty, that is everything you could possibly want to know about the Reprimand, including every bit of technical information and breakpoint the weapon has. So, what is my conclusion on how good it is really? Well, in my opinion, the Reprimand is one of the best new Warbond guns we've gotten in some time, especially for the release state of a gun. Up until now, and ever since the Democratic Detonation Warbond, we have only seen new weapons added in a relatively weak state, only finding play through later buffs. However, this SMG marks the turning of that page, feeling as though it's the first pre-buffed weapon rather than pre-nerfed. The fire rate's not great, the accuracy's pretty bad, requiring you to play at very close ranges, and it has no crowd control to speak of. But the raw firepower of the weapon sits in a relatively perfect spot to hit many major breakpoints throughout the game, and the automatic nature of the weapon allows it to instead find accuracy through volume, making a very capable firearm for aggressive playstyles and operations. While I know many of you are likely disappointed this weapon cannot be used with the ballistic shield, I'm personally just happy they finally added an assault rifle into the game that feels like it's in a good state right from the get go. It's by no means the best primary weapon in the game on either front, but it is a welcome new addition to the collection I will be utilizing anytime I get the itch to pick up something punchy and automatic, which is a-okay in my opinion, as not every primary can be as crazy as the Plasma Purifier's rework, for example. Overall, I give the SMG 32 Reprimand, also known as the Space UMP, a 8 out of 10 for the Terminids and a 7 out of 10 for the Automatons. A powerful yet not overpowered or abnormally strong weapon, otherwise known as a well-balanced primary. Thanks for watching till the end, and have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
I
I
think
think that's a factory strider right there. Yes,
Oh
it
yeah.
was!
Oh,
Yes, it was.
oh